Across China, an unyielding rainfall has unleashed record-breaking floods, deadly landslides, and unending torrents that have torn through cities and villages alike. From the rugged mountains of the north to the crowded river valleys of the south, the nation is gripped by one of the most devastating monsoon seasons in memory. Rivers have broken their banks, reservoirs are filled to the brim, and rescue missions continue day and night as millions struggle to survive nature's fury. Southern China has once again been battered by unrelenting rainfall, unleashing a chain of disasters that has shaken the nation to its core. Provinces such as Guangdong and Hunan have been left submerged as downpours transformed rivers into raging torrents. Water burst through embankments, overwhelming towns and villages, and leaving entire communities underwater. Homes that had stood for generations collapsed in the surge. Farmland vanished beneath muddy waves, and cars floated like abandoned toys in the brown floodwaters. In Guangdong, the destruction has been merciless. Dozens of people were killed as raging torrents consumed low-lying neighborhoods with terrifying speed. Survivors recall the sound of walls crumbling and vehicles smashing against one another as floodwaters tore through streets. More than 100,000 residents were displaced, fleeing in panic to higher ground. Power outages spread across multiple cities, cutting off communication and leaving families without news of their loved ones. Hunan province faced an equally dire fate. Swollen rivers ripped through entire towns, snapping bridges like twigs and breaching smaller dams that buckled under the pressure. By morning, whole streets had disappeared beneath churning water. Over 200,000 people were driven into makeshift shelters. In crowded gymnasiums and school halls, children huddled next to their parents, listening to the ceaseless pounding of rain on the rooftops, terrified that the flood might reach them next.
我操，这个桥我估计都要塌。啊，谁家的煤气罐？我操！
Further north, the capital's outer districts, Miyun and Yanqing, faced a once-in-a-century deluge. What usually falls over an entire year came crashing down in just a matter of days. Highways were cut off, metro stations sealed, and entire communities left isolated. Rescue boats navigated streets that once carried buses and taxis, while helicopters dropped food to neighborhoods surrounded by water.
¡A la verga! ¡Fuck! Mira, bueno.
The most haunting tragedy unfolded in a care home, where floodwaters surged through the building before rescuers could arrive. 31 elderly residents drowned, sparking outrage across the nation. Families demanded accountability, accusing local officials of ignoring warnings and failing to include vulnerable institutions in evacuation plans. The tragedy has ignited debate on government preparedness and the painful question: how many more must die before lessons are learned?
妈们儿啊，今年第一场大暴雨降到十里铺了，你看，啊，那个车淹的马上把车棚都淹着了。我这货车马上到油箱这儿，淹到油箱这儿了。
At Miyun Reservoir, the inflow surged to levels never before recorded. Billions of cubic meters of water poured into the basin, pushing the structure to its limits and sending shockwaves through China's flood defense system. In neighboring Hebei, hillsides collapsed without warning, burying homes under mud and stone. At least 6 people were killed, and dozens more remain missing. Helicopters and military units worked non-stop, dropping supplies and airlifting survivors trapped in remote villages cut off by landslides. The wave of destruction has spared no region. In Sichuan, days of unending rain caused mountain slopes in Aba Prefecture to collapse, entombing settlements under tons of rock and mud. 19 people lost their lives there, while thousands were forced into temporary shelters. In Chongqing, the mighty Yangtze River and its tributaries spilled over into residential areas. Cars were swept away, shops destroyed, and more than 60,000 residents were evacuated from Guangzhou and Guizhou. The southwest has also been devastated. In Guizhou's Guangdong region, midnight landslides crushed homes without warning. Families clawed through the mud with bare hands, desperate to save neighbors. At least a dozen lives were lost, and many more remain unaccounted for. Local authorities declared the highest level of flood emergency, mobilizing every available resource. In Yunnan, mountain streams became violent torrents, sweeping away bridges and isolating entire counties for days. Ancient villages and tea plantations were swallowed by floodwaters, destroying centuries-old traditions in hours. Elderly residents stood in disbelief as ancestral homes collapsed into the currents. Emergency shelters quickly filled beyond capacity, with reports of food and medicine shortages growing by the hour. Across China, rescue operations face monumental challenges. Collapsed bridges, blocked highways, and widespread power outages hinder every effort.
我们老大没得也就转到，一个转到水位还有重量的呀，还有重量。
To confront this threat, Chinese authorities, in partnership with the WMO, have unveiled MAZU, a bold initiative to deploy AI-driven early warning systems in flood-prone regions. This program promises faster alerts, stronger communication, and special focus on protecting vulnerable groups such as the elderly, children, and disabled. Officials say that without drastic improvements in early warning and disaster planning, tens of millions more could face the same fate in future monsoon seasons.
哎呦，天灾无情啊，解决干。二月基本上坏了。要库儿的出票。
Yet for families living along swollen rivers today, such promises feel distant. They mourn the dead, sift through mud-soaked ruins, and cling to one another as they salvage what little remains. Their voices echo a grim truth. Extreme rainfall is no longer an occasional disaster, but a defining challenge of life in a warming Asia.